country with only one house in sight. And we had to walk about 1.5 miles to get there. And we had one teacher for all 7 grades. And I can't remember her name, but I thought she was just wonderful. And we had to teach us words. She wrote the word on our desk with chalk, and then we took corn and went around this word to learn what it was like. It was a school that was heated with a large stove in the center of the building, and we had to bring in coal or wood and to make the stove burn, make the fire burn, and that kept us warm in wintertime. And there were probably about 30 children there in all 7 grades.
Second school and your teacher like?
The second school was in a little village where we had moved while I was still in the 1st grade. And it was another one-room country school like the first one. And I had a teacher who was related to us. And I sat with a little girl. We had seats that the 2 could sit in. And I sat with her, and we became good friends. And then in a couple of months, she went off to Washington to get a job because they were needing people. It was during the First World War. And my mother, who had been a teacher before she got married, was asked to take the job in this little school, which she did, and she took all 3 of us to school with her, including my little brother, who wasn't old enough to go to school, so he just played. And so she was my second teacher. And of course, she was just as nice as the first, well, really my 3rd teacher. And I went to that school until I graduated from the 7th grade. And all those years with my mother as the teacher. We had to drive our own car, and it was an elementary school and high school all in one. And we drove our own car and had to pay tuition because it was in Carroll County and we lived in Frederick County. But there was no high school close by in Frederick County. It was twice that far to ride. So that's the reason. While I was a senior in high school, the president of Salisbury Normal School, which was a school to train elementary school teachers down on the eastern shore of Maryland, came to the high school and told us about how small the school was. And it was just like one big family, and it sounded good. And they went on picnics, and they did all sorts of things, and it sounded interesting to me. So I decided that's where I'd go, down at Salisbury Normal School on the eastern shore of Maryland. This one.
How did you get to college? Transportation?
In order to get to Salisbury, which was quite a distance from the little village where I lived, we went by automobile to Baltimore, and then we took a trolley car from Baltimore to Annapolis. And then we got on a ferry boat and went across the Chesapeake Bay. This was before the bridge was built. And to a little place called Claiborne. And there a bus picked us up and took us to Salisbury. It took most of a whole day to get down there.
How did you find a job?
Sorry now. Graduated from Salisbury Normal School. I went back home, and I had not written application letters of application to different superintendents as other girls had done, because I just felt sure that I would get a job from the superintendent in Frederick County, whom I knew. So I went to him soon after I had graduated, and when I was shown into his office, he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "Well, I need a classroom with some students." And he said, "You're not old enough to teach." And I said, "Oh, yes, I am. I just graduated." He was had known me since I was a little girl and used to go into his office with my mother. And so he thought of me as so he said, I have a one-room country school, knowing that I was familiar with one-room country schools. And how would you like that? And I said, it doesn't matter what kind of school it is as long as I have a teaching job. And that's how I got my very first job.
Can you tell me something about your first year of teaching in the one-room country school?
Well, it was quite different from anything you'd find today, because there are no one-room country schools. And I had 21 students in all 7 grades, and we had a large stove in the middle of the room, which heated the room, and we had to bring coal in a coal bucket and to keep the fire going. And we had to put coal in there at night and turn the draft back so it would stay warm all night long. And I had one student in 1st grade, and one in 6th grade, and a couple in 5 and so on in the other grades. But anyway, I boarded in a house that was in sight of the school, the only one, and with a family, and slept on a 3rd floor in a 3rd floor bedroom, which had absolutely no heat. And I was used to a dormitory at school, so that was quite an experience. But needless to say, I didn't get a cold all winter long. But anyway, at the end of that year, I asked the superintendent if he could give me something on a hard road, because this little school was located on crossroads and there was mud in all 4 directions. So in wintertime, I even got stuck in the mud and had to get a rail from a rail fence to put under the back wheel so I could get out and get home. And so at the end of the year, I asked if I could be transferred to another school that was on a hard road. And so he gave me my 2nd school.
Where was your second teaching job, and what was it like?
To a little town called Emmitsburg, and it was elementary and high school all in one building. But at least it was in a village, and at least the roads were paved. And I boarded again with a lady who had a house that was heated, and I had a room there also. And I had the 5th grade, and in that 5th grade I had about 40 students. And I really loved teaching there. It was a joy. I had enjoyed the one-room school, but this was a real pleasure. And I taught there for 8 years.
Why did you stop teaching?
I stopped teaching because I had gotten married, and I wanted to have children and teach just my own children, which I did. I had 4 children, and I did quite a bit of teaching at home. Is that enough?